Welcome back to Tone and Teak. Here's a look at what's to come in this episode as I refinish this mid-century modern Stingray coffee table. I picked this table up off Marketplace for $50. It was in pretty bad shape and I probably overpaid, but I liked the look of it and was keen for a new project. The first job is to remove the crusty old finish. After my last video, I learned that I really hate paint stripper. It's messy and expensive, so I went and bought a set of carbide scrapers. As you can see, the finish is no match for the scraper. It's also really satisfying to use. I'd totally recommend it. After just a few minutes of scraping, it was time to give the tabletop a sand. I was definitely not expecting such an exotic wood grain underneath. Now for the part that I was dreading the most, the legs. I started out by removing the legs from the tabletop by unscrewing these brackets. And to procrastinate a little bit, I decided to scrap the underside of the tabletop too. The legs and the tabletop were held together with these brackets. They are a little bit rusty, so I put them in some vinegar to loosen up the rust while I do the rest of the repairs. Now it's time to tackle the legs. While scraping, I noticed a bit of a wobble, so I decided to knock the joints apart. This made removing the finish a lot easier. But it was still tricky in some of the areas around the slats. I found the best way to get right up to the edge of the corners was to use my small scraper blade by hand. When I bought the scrapers, I also bought some of this sanding mesh to try. This one's 180 grit. This sanding mesh is a game changer. I used this one sheet for the entirety of the legs and it was almost brand new at the end. I don't think I'll be going back to sandpaper when I can. Here we are. Everything's been stripped and sanded. I'm now going to tackle some small areas needing repairs. I'm filling these damaged areas with some teak wood filler to start with. Because I'm impatient, I'm using a heat gun to speed up the drying time. And then I'm gently sanding the areas flat. Next I'm going to re-glue the frame. The old dowels were still good, so I just added some new glue and clamped it all back together overnight. Good as new. Now it's time to refinish and blend the repairs. First I will use Scandinavian oil to bring out the colour. I'll then do my grain painting and sealing with shellac, and I'll finish it off with a top coat of polyurethane. The Scandinavian oil is great. You can use it as a standalone finish as it has poly in it, but I prefer to use it as a base. I'm applying it with 4/0 steel wool and then immediately buffing off the excess. I find it's best to buff off the oil as soon as you can. The tin states to wait for half an hour before you do it, but in my experience, if you wait that long, it's really hard to get off. After a day, the oil is cured and it's time to set down a seal coat of shellac. I'm mixing up some new shellac in a ratio of roughly 50 grams of shellac flakes to 200 milliliters of methylated spirits. The shellac will seal in the Scandinavian oil, as well as provide a means to blend in my repairs later on. With the seal coat applied, I'm now mixing up some toned shellac using natural earth pigments. I won't show all of the areas that I grain paint in detail, but I will show you this main area on the top so that you get an idea of what I'm doing. I tend to start with lighter tones before adding in darker tones for detail, but you could probably do it the other way around as well. Because shellac dissolves into itself, this technique blends really well. To feather in the blends even more, you can use straight methylated spirits on a brush or even some steel wool to softly blend in the colours. With all of the areas blended, I then sealed them all in with another coat of shellac. With the shellac stage finished, it's now time to give the whole piece a light sand down with 400 grit before applying the poly. I'm thinning the poly with 20% mineral turpentine, which just makes it a little bit easier to wipe on and also speeds up the drying time a bit. The poly is really easy to apply. I just use a soft cloth and wipe it all over. I don't wipe too much of the excess off like I do with the oil, as I don't want to take too much of the finish away. After the final coat is cured, it's time to knock back the finish with 4/0 steel wool. I'm going for a semi-gloss finish today, so only a very light rubbing. To finish it off, I'm applying some soft paste wax. If you want to see how I made this paste wax, check out my first video where I showed the process. After letting the wax dry for about half an hour, it was now time to buff. For the second video in a row, I'm going to put it on record that I really need to get a polisher. Half an hour and a sore elbow later, and it's all done. The last step is to fix the tabletop back to the legs. So I took out the hardware from the vinegar and cleaned it off and fastened it all back together. Now it's time for a little bit of before and after. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video and subscribe, or even leave a comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.